going to convert this HTML theme into the Angular framework. Fine, the static website says .html and the Angular website says just the page name. Now this theme I have downloaded it from the W3 layout. This is not for commercial purpose. This is just for an education purpose. So let's get into it. Now if you click on about, you can see it's saying about page, and in the static HTML it loads the about.html page. Both are same because we have just converted the HTML theme into the Angular framework. Now here in this tutorial we are going to focus on the routing concept in Angular. So we are going to see how the router outlet tag is used, and how the routing page is can be defined. This is what we are going to see in this tutorial. Fine, now there seems to be no match. There seems to be exact, we cannot say there is an exact match, but some way it is matching, and other than the font everything seems to be matching. This is the static one and this is the Angular framework. Fine, now the header and footer is common for all the pages, and just the middle content is getting changed when I click on the links. Fine, the very first thing, we are going to create a project. So to create a project, what we will be using, we will be using the code ng new and the name of the project, and we are inside the folder called Angular, and the name of the project is HTML to Angular. Now it is asking for routing. Yes, we need routing, and we are going to use the CSS. So click on enter. Now if you see, it is getting loaded, and in the Angular folder we have our current project. So let's wait till it loads, and now you see successfully initialized. To run and see the output of your project, you can use ngserve. This ngserve should be inside your project. So open your current project with the help of cd. Once you found, and you have run the code ngserve, so the default folder of Angular will be loaded in the port localhost colon 4200. 4200 is a port, and now this is the default page, and we are going to see where this default page is loading from in this tutorial. Fine, now let me open that project in the Visual Studio Code. Now inside the source file we have an index.html. So this index.html is very important. If you want to link your style sheet, you can link it in this head section, and if you want to change the title, you can see you can have any title. So let me refresh it. You don't have to refresh, Angular itself does, but I'm going to refresh it so that we can see the output in a quicker way. Now the title here is any title because I have modified it. Fine, that's working. Now the index.html will call the app component.typescript. Inside the app folder we can find the app component.typescript, and the app component.typescript again calls the app component.html. I am saying that index is directly HTML is directly calling the HTML. That doesn't work. The index.html calls the TypeScript, and again the TypeScript will call the HTML, which both the files are inside the app. So we get the prefix as app.component.typescript, app.component.html. Now this index page also has a TypeScript file. So this main.typescript file calls the index.html, and again the app component.typescript file calls the app component.html file. So how we are saying that it is calling it, we have to know what is selector. You see, this selector is being used in the index.html. So whatever we write inside this HTML file will be act as a selector, and that HTML file will be replaced with this selector app root. Now once this is done, we are going to create the routing pages. Sorry, we are going to create the components so that we can create routers. So to create component in Angular, we would be using ng generate component and the name of the component. And the component here, I'm referring it as a pages. So home is a page, so about is a page, and contact is a page. So these component will be found inside the app folder. So once I enter it, you'll see the folder has been created. Likewise, we have HTML file, TypeScript file, and CSS file, and again a TypeScript folder for testing. I'm skipping it for this video because it is no use for us. And we are going to again create a component, and this time it is for the page about. So we can give ng, G stand for generate, C stand for component, and contact, and the page and name of the page, and that's what we did. Likewise, I have created the component for all the pages: home, about, contact, and services. Once this is done, we are going to paste the assets. What do I mean by that? The required CSS, HTML, CSS images, and JavaScript. Copy it and get into our folder Angular project, and paste it inside the folder called assets. And once this is done, just for testing purpose, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the index.html in Angular, and in the index.html I'm going to paste all the static HTML from the HTML template. You can see I'm commenting at the app root selector. So this is the HTML. Whatever is there inside the body, I'm going to copy it and paste it into the Angular index.html. The CSS is missing now, and the JavaScript will work fine because it's in the body section itself, and the assets are linked properly. Except the CSS file, everything is working. We got the images, we got the JavaScript. Now we have missed it because the CSS is in the head section. So copy the head section CSS link tag and paste it in our Angular index.html. Let me change the title to our channel name. Now you can see this is a static page, and this is not the right way. We have already created a component for the home. So what we do is we will have header and footer on this index.html page, and in between whatever is there we will paste it on the separate component. So in the index.html only have the header and the footer. Whatever is there in between, remove it, because we have already created a component for that, and this code will be inside the home component. By my saying, you might have understood the home component is simply means home.component.html. Let me copy it again. I think I missed it. Leave the header, and whatever is there after the header and whatever is there before the footer, just copy it and paste it in the component, home component. For HTML pasting, we have a separate file called home.component.html. So get into the home component. Now if you load the index page, you will only see the header and footer file, because we have removed the content which is inside header and footer. Again the same thing, This app.component, let me paste it over here now again. So just show you the actual way of working. And we know the selector of app component is app root. Now if you see, the index.html calls the app component.typescript, sorry, app component.html, and that is working. And now what I'm going to do is, and again, this app component.html will call the router. The router is the app routing.module.ts, and we have to define the URL in this section. Let's get into the documentation. So we have to create the array. Don't worry about the code, we just have to copy paste it. We need to specify the URL and the component name. Just me replace it. So when there is the call for the URL home, I want to load the component which is home.component.typescript. So this is a class. We have to call this class, and we have to import that class as well. That's why it's showing a red mark. So you click on the quick fix and it will automatically get it for you. Likewise, do it for all the pages. So we have about, we have services, and we have contact. So when there is the call for the URL, it will get into the TypeScript file. About, get into the TypeScript file and get to know the name of the class and call this class. And again, this class is going to call a selector, and that selector is simply the corresponding HTML file on that particular folder. Quick fix, it is going to import it automatically. And finally the contact section. And everything seems to be fine. And now we know the HTML files inside each component is blank. So just to show you, when I call the URL, the URL is going to call this home. It is because the TypeScript, we have a selector in that. Home, it is going to call the TypeScript. Again, the TypeScript is going to call the selector, and this selector is defined inside the HTML page, and this happens for all other page as well. So this is the flow of the Angular. So we'll paste whatever we are expecting on the home. So this selector, we need to mention it on the app component.html. It's a HTML tag. Home works. Now you just have to replace the code. Remove the home works. Now to understand the flow, the index.html will call the app component.ts file. Now let me remove it as well. We need one to demonstrate. Fine. Now index.html, main.ts file calls the index.html, and you see there is a selector app root, and this is because the selector, we can find the selector using the TypeScript file. So app.component.typescript will have the selector. The definition of the app root will be inside the app component.html. So in the app component.html we again have a selector. So this selector is of the home component. Home component, we need to get into TypeScript, and we again find the selector, and this selector is defined in the HTML page. So this is a long process, and this is how it is done in Laravel. Sorry, it is done in Angular. You just have to replace it. Likewise, do it for all the pages, or you can say for all the components. Just make sure you are naming the selector right. App services and app contact is missing. So just show you the name. This is a selector. The selector can be found in the TypeScript file. So app contact, and for the service, again get into the TypeScript file to know the selector. It's app service. The definition of app service will be in the page services.component.html. Fine. If I refresh it, you will see now there comes the concept called router outlet. Whatever you write inside a router outlet, we don't need everything in a single page. So when there is a need for the home URL, we want to display only the home component. So when there is the requirement for about page, when we want to show only the about component. Now again you can see all the pages are showing at once. So the href will not work. I'm in the header section now. We have to make it as hash, and to know the href location we have to use the router link, and we need to pass a URL. So this is about URL, and this is service URL, and this is contact URL. Fine. Now let me remove it. We don't need right now. We don't need this, because the Angular is smart enough to identify on its own. When we need home, it will display the home. When we need about, it will display about. You just saw that I have removed the router outlet, and Angular itself finds the appropriate match TypeScript, and displays the corresponding HTML. Fine, everything seems working. Now we just have to replace the HTML. Open the HTML theme, and whatever is there inside the header and footer, just copy it and paste it in the about.component.html. Now to check it, call the URL about, and the about page is working. Now the same way, let's get into the service. So likewise, get into the HTML theme service page and copy the content which is inside the header and footer, and copy those HTML and paste it in the service.component.html. That's what I'm going to do now. In whatever is inside header and footer, copy it. I'm searching for header and now copy it and paste it in the service.component.html. Now if it says there is an error, the good thing about Angular is it also identifies the HTML error. It says there is a, what do you say, it's a quotes, there is an extra quotes. Let me see, there is again an error, seems to be an error. Now that's working fine. Now the same way for the contact, paste the HTML themes contact section inside the contact.component.html. This is a repetition which we are doing it for the third time. And now the URL is calling the pages because of the router outlet and the router page. When there is home, you see home, we need to add home as well. Let me forward it a bit. Fine, home is also working. Now the thing is, when I click on the about, it is not working. Now let's check the about URL is working, service URL will also work, and the contact URL will also work. Now the problem is when I click on the navigation link, it is not working. It is because we have used hash on the href. So we don't have to use the hash, we have to use the actual URL over there. Fine, now let's check. Click on the about, URL changes to about. Click on the service, URL changes to service. Click on the contact, URL changes to contact. So if I remove it and directly access the domain, it's the domain name, and it says, it just shows the header and footer because index.html just have the header and footer. It has the header and it has the footer. This is the index.html page. So when I call it, it is just showing the header and footer. So when we call the index.html page, when we call the domain, this is the code for that. What it says is, when there is a call for the domain, when the path is blank, call redirect the URL, which is I need to show the home URL. So if you see, if I refresh it, it will directly redirect to the home page, which is home URL. Let me remove it and press enter, and again you can see it is redirecting to the home page. And that's all for this video. Thank you so much for listening. And the URL is also working.